So Bari the dad conveniently, I'm just gonna say it like that, needs to leave the family to go and make money so that they can make the mortgage payments. Because remember, they took out a second mortgage on a house to pay for their mother's medicine, and now that she's dead, I mean, they still owe that money. You know what I mean? And so he has to make money, or else they're going to lose the house. So he has to leave. And because their electricity is out in the house, because they can't afford it, they won't be able to call him and check in with him. And he's just okay with dipping out. And that's why I say, when I say like he's like a bad father, because he's like, he's there, but he's not there. And then it's like, your wife just died, and now you're leaving your 4 kids and your mother alone to go make some money, as opposed to trying to comfort them. And he doesn't seem super shook up about Marwarni's death either. Like, he even tries to tell Bondi, like, you still have to go to school tomorrow. Like, it's time to get over it. You knew she's in a better place now. She's not suffering anymore. So you still need to go to school tomorrow. Just keep moving forward. Just keep pushing on. And it could be said that he's just doing this to put on a brave face, which could be, yeah. But just, he's not really supporting the family. And the family is a huge theme throughout this movie. He's not being a supportive father to his family. He's let Rennie basically take over as the mother of the house. Instead of going to college and living her own life and being great, he allows her to be like, yeah, of course you're going to be cooking and cleaning and taking care of the kids now, And he just lets stuff happen. He's very passive. So he conveniently dips out. Then another tragedy happens, and you kind of see it. They don't fully show it, like they don't show the full thing, but there's just kind of these weird back-to-back clips. Like, they're doing one part of the story, and then there's a clip of the grandmother standing up out of her wheelchair, because she's wheelchair bound. So she's standing up out of her wheelchair. She's looking genuinely afraid, and it just, cuts back to Rennie and them, and they're doing all their stuff, and it's very subtle. Something's happening, but it doesn't all play out directly in front of you. It doesn't happen until later. When Rennie and them come home, they notice that the wheelchair is in the living room, and it's empty, and they don't know where grandmother is. Rennie and Bondi go into the well room, the water room, and the grandmother's body is in the well. And obviously this is extremely traumatic for Bondi. He's screaming. He doesn't know what to do. Rennie is horrified. Like, how did this even happen? Like, how did she end up in the well? She's wheelchair bound. She can't walk. You hadn't seen her walk this whole time. But all of a sudden now she's at the bottom of the well. This is the well that they, get all their water out of, by the way. Like, it's really gross. A lot of stuff happens in this well, and I'm like, y'all still drinking and bathing and washing your dishes and stuff, and that's dead body water. Anyway, I'm gonna get back to the story. Sorry. But so then another funeral happens, and everybody's distraught, and Bondi is like, he's in shock, he's sick, he can't handle it. He's like, when the mother died, it was kind of a thing of like, we knew this was coming. Even Bondi, he felt bad about it, but his father Bari was like, look, we knew she was going to die. She's been sick for years. She's no longer in pain anymore. So it was a different type of grief and a different type of reaction to her dying. When Rama dies, it's like, this is actually like a serious like shock to everyone because of the way that she died. And after burying her, Rennie kind of justifies it again by like, she probably like tripped and failed. It was obviously an accident, just trying to make sense of it. But none of it makes sense. And that adds to the unease. Even Rennie, who's trying to make sense of it all, none of it actually makes sense as to why she would have died. Bondi is in shock. He's like laying in bed. He can't really say anything. He's not talking that much. And Rennie's like, oh my God, he must be in shock, poor thing, after seeing, grandma's dead body. Like, and it's very understandable for him to have this reaction. But let's talk about Bondi for a minute. Bondi and Ian, because they share a bedroom, they have a very close relationship. They speak sign language to each other. They joke, they laugh. When Bondi was scared after his mom died of like her coming back and everything, Ian made fun of him. It was like, they have a really good relationship. They have a lot of cute brotherly moments. At one point, Tony gives Bondi a viewfinder. I think it's called a viewfinder. And Ian wants to play with it, and Bondi's like, no, you can't play with it. So Ian literally, he sticks his finger in his nose and he wipes a booger on his brother. And it's just a little silly moments. And it's silly moments like that that really helps you get attached to the characters. Because they're just like, yo, you know, they're actual brothers. They're not just a bunch of actors who you put in a room and said, act. You know what I mean? But yeah, they have a very interesting relationship. But after Rama, the grandmother, dies, Bondi starts hearing voices. And so he's laying there and he's sick, and you hear him mumbling to himself, no, I don't want to kill my brother. I don't want to do it. I don't want to hurt him. I don't want to kill him. And there's even a moment where Ian actually sees something, you don't catch it when you first see it, standing over him, whispering to him. Because at this point, something is trying to, whatever is in the house, whatever is attached to the family, is trying to convince Bondi that he needs to kill Ian. And in the midst of everything that's happening, as Rennie and Tony are on their whole thing trying to figure out what's going on, Bondi is slowly being possessed, I guess is the right word, but he's slowly having himself worn down, and you catch him multiple times staring at Ian with this weird look, like this intense stare. And there's even one point in time where he takes a knife from a meal that they were eating, and he hides it behind him, and he's just like holding it, and he's looking at Ian like, you know, like he might actually be a danger to him. He might actually hurt Ian because he has something whispering in his ear telling him that this is what he has to do. But because Rennie and Tony are so busy with their other stuff, and Bari is busy doing whatever the fuck Bari is. Bari's a terrible dad, by the way. He's like there, but he ain't there. You know what I mean? Nobody's paying attention to the two youngest children, and it builds up the suspense of like, oh my God, like what's going to happen? While we are paying attention to all this other stuff, the kids are the ones that are being manipulated by whatever evil is in the house. So after burying their grandmother, Rennie and Tony find a letter that she wrote to someone named Budaman. And so they go into the city to meet him, find out that he is somebody who's been a great friend of the grandmother for a very, very long time. And they were so close since they were children. So close that they never dated. They just remained best friends. And he gives you a lot of the exposition. So he's the exposition person. He's the one who's written articles about this. He knows pretty much, well, it seems like he knows what's going on. He doesn't know everything, but he knows a lot more about what's going on than the rest of them. And he does tell them that the reason that the grandparents never really accepted the marriage was, one, because Marwarni was an artist and that was not considered a noble or a good job to have. But two, there was this concern that she was not having children. She did not have children for many, many years. And then out of nowhere, she started popping out kids like crazy. Now you got 4 kids. And there was a fear that she didn't ask for children from Allah. She asked for children from Satan. And that's how she ended up, fixing her fertility issues and having children. And so Rennie's kind of like, really, nigga? Like, oh, okay. So my mom asked for babies from Satan. Okay, what does that mean? And he gives them a magazine that he published that tells a bunch of, it's like a conspiracy theory magazine, but he's like, hey, you should read this. So he gives it to them. But when they get home, Rennie doesn't read it. Like, she just goes on about her day. But Tony reads it. And Tony's like, okay, this is what's going on. Like, again, thank goodness for Tony, because Rennie is a typical horror protagonist that she kind of seemed like she knows stuff is going on, but then also the more that she learns, the more she starts trying to be like, this ain't real. Tony reads it, and basically the article talks about how there is a cult of Satan worshipers who, it's like a fertility cult. So they target women who are infertile, who cannot have children, and they offer them basically what they want, which is to have children. But in order to do so, they have to join the cult. They have to do all the Satan stuff. And the last child that turned 7 years old, they have to give up that child to the cult, to Satan, whoever. And the other part that they mentioned that too, I thought that was kind of interesting, is that the women don't get pregnant by their husbands. They get pregnant by other men in the cult. So it's insinuating that Rennie and her siblings all have different fathers, and none of them are Bari's kids, which is real suspect. And they don't take that anywhere, really. They just like, hey, haven't you wondered why we look different? And Rennie's like, we always look different. But that's an interesting point there, that again, Bari not being here for this whole act is very suspicious, because it's like, what role does he play in this? And there is a point earlier when Bari is like whispering something to Marwarni while she's laying in bed, and Rennie catches him, but he says something about take pity on the children or something like that. And she's like, you know what I mean? Like, that was kind of weird, but then he just shoos her off. But again, I don't like Bari. I don't know what it is. I don't like him. But yeah, so basically Ian is going to be turning 7 in a few days. So Tony's really worried. He's like, listen, we need to protect Ian. Something's going to happen with him. The cult's going to try to come and take him. Tony's all in. But what the article is also saying is the family has to voluntarily give him up. Meaning, if they don't give him up voluntarily and they stick together as a family, then they should be okay. Cut to Bondi looking like he's ready to sacrifice Ian to the cult that he doesn't know it's a cult, but somebody's telling him he's got to do something, which I find very, very interesting, because again, these things are all happening at the same time. There's another thing that comes up, and it reminds me of Hereditary, in the sense that Tony brings up the fact that there are all these people that randomly just be around Marwarni, but whenever he would try to talk to them, they wouldn't really talk to him. And whenever he tried to figure out who they were, they wouldn't really say anything to him. And when you look at the old photos, it's like you see these people here, but they don't know who they are. They're not family, as far as they know. The next day, Budaman gives a letter to Hendra. Hendra is coming to deliver that letter, because Budaman, he figures out something else crazy that's happening, and he's like, oh my God, I missed something. I got to give them this information. He gives the letter to Hendra to take to Rennie. Now, at the same time, there's this weird scene where the guy who usually gives Budaman his massages is this blind guy. I didn't mention him earlier because he ain't that important until this part happens. So again, it's like the movie does a good job of like introducing people and then bringing them back. But there's this weird scene where the massage guy is like banging on the door, and Budaman's like, it's not time for my massage. You're not supposed to be here for my massage. He thinks something's really suspicious. And the man's just like banging on the door, and Budaman picks up like I can't remember what it was, like some kind of bat. He picks up something to get ready to like fight. But then it cuts there. We don't see what happens after that. And I was like, well, what, like, was the massage guy with the cult? We don't really know. And if he was, how long has he been giving Budaman massages? I don't know. But anyway, while Hendra's on his way back to deliver the letter to Rennie, someone jumps in front of him in the road, and he ends up getting into an accident with a car. It's really graphic, like in a way you don't expect from this movie at this point. But it's very, very graphic, and he is shredded by this car. His body is brought back to his father, Ustad, and Rennie and everybody is there, and she finds the note that falls out of his pocket as they're bringing his body inside. Rennie and the family are staying at Ustad's house because it's just too much craziness happening at the house, with ghosts popping up and people getting attacked. They don't know what's going on. They're afraid. They're staying at Ustad's house. Rennie finds the letter, but she doesn't read it, because then Bari ends up coming back home and he's finding out everything, and he's like, that's it. We're moving into the city. We're not going to do this anymore. But that night, the cult shows up. And I'm going to tell you what happens, but then I'm going to explain to you the twist at the end, and I'm going to tell you how the twist makes a lot of this not make any sense. So